Well, just start out by telling me who you are and what.
Yeah, my name is Doug Gustafson. I'm chairman of HomesNOW Not Later. HomesNOW is a 501c3 nonprofit. We were founded in June of 2017. Since that time, we operate the first tiny home community in Bellingham, and now the second tiny home community in Bellingham. Our first tiny home community, Unity Village, has been in operation for over a year, and Swift Haven was set up a few weeks ago.
So tell me about Swift Haven.
Swift Haven is our second tiny home community and the second tiny home community in Bellingham for people who are homeless. However, it got set up a little bit differently than Unity Village did. At Unity Village, we built our own tiny homes. We pay our own bills for the site, and we had our own design for the structures. And it took us a little longer to get it going too. We started off as two tent encampments, Winter Haven and Safe Haven, and then we were able to get the site that we're at right now. This is Unity Village. When it comes to Swift Haven, though, that was a little bit different. In that case, the city provided the site, similar to here at Unity Village, but they also pay the monthly utilities like the electrical and water and garbage, and then the county provided the structures, which are 8x8, and they're built by a company called 360 Modular out of Ferndale. And those structures are, that's how we were able to get Swift Haven up and running in like 2 weeks. So it was a three-way partnership where the county provided the structures, the city provided the site and the utilities, and HomesNOW is running the place, is the manager/operator of the site.
You can take your mask off.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
So just gonna start out with some broad questions. What does it mean to be homeless?
I think homelessness means without a home. Period. You don't have a place to stay that is your own space and where you can be independent, and hence you're kind of in survival mode rather than moving on to the next thing you want to move on to in your life. And that's what I think that's what I would define it as. Sometimes you can get shelter, but shelter isn't the same thing as being housed. If you're in like a congregate shelter where there's a bunch of people in one room, that still keeps you in survival mode. You still have to leave in the morning. You don't have your own private space. It's just not the same.
How does that compare to what you've got here?
Well, at Unity Village here, the units are 8x10 on the inside, so they are a little small, obviously, but it's like the inside of a small bedroom. It's got heat, insulation. People have their own private space. We have the same amenities as you'd have in housing, like a kitchen and bathroom. Well, we would like to have actual toilets instead of porta potties, but the basic amenities where you have your own place and you can get out of survival mode and then move forward.
So, in your own words, as succinctly as you can, how would you summarize sort of the issue of homelessness?
Well, I think that the issue of homelessness has many factors to it. You have people that have mental illness and addiction issues, which are the stereotypes around homelessness, and those are issues too. We don't have enough services for that. You also, I would say most of the time it's an income thing. Your income is too low for the amount that it costs to pay all your bills, and I would say that the vast majority of the time that's the case. But if you're also put in a position where you don't have your own space and you can't get out of survival mode, then you will be much more dysfunctional than you otherwise would be if you were out of survival mode. And so when people get out of survival mode, they typically know how to take care of their own issues themselves as adults, and so I think the problem with homelessness isn't just the people that are homeless, but it's the perception of homelessness to where people that are perfectly capable adults that can totally take care of themselves, maybe it's just an income thing, are treated like they are dysfunctional, and then they're put in an environment which promotes dysfunction, when in reality most people can take care of themselves, and the rest of the community that's never faced that before kind of doesn't understand that the guy they see laying on the sidewalk isn't the entire picture of what homelessness is. They say, I saw a homeless guy on the street. They didn't notice, though, the person that regularly takes showers and is clean cut, but they are homeless and they're staying at the emergency shelter. And so it's that there are actually more people out there that are homeless than people realize, but they're operating off of the stereotypes of homelessness and thinking that that's the whole group. And then when somebody new comes along that doesn't fit into that category, they're treated like they do fit into that category. And all of the programs are kind of based around like the trouble case being the norm. And that is what I think leads to models that don't work as quickly to actually get people housed and moving forward.
Tell me a little bit about the difference between chronically homeless, I think, like you were talking about, and those who are maybe episodically homeless.
Well, I think that there's people that it's not black and white. I think there's people that fit into all of the above. They might be chronically homeless but not have the severe issues, but they just haven't been able to get back on their feet. A lot of services, a lot of housing, a lot of to get your license, all this stuff oftentimes requires an actual address, not a P.O. box. And a lot of times the next thing you would need to get started and moving forward, you're not able to get it. And so you could be chronically homeless for 3 years and then start to move forward pretty quickly if you get a few basic things out of the way, such as an address to send your mail to, your Social Security, or to get your driver's license, things like that.
So if you had, pie in the sky, if you had all the resources in the world, or suddenly had more resources than you know what to do with, how would you go about solving it?
Well, the main problem that we've had from the start, and I think that a lot of other groups that would want to get involved in this have from the start, is land, really, like the spot to do it on. Land, especially here in Whatcom County, land is very expensive, and to get approved for anything, you also have to go through, red tape, government red tape and regulations and stuff. But that's the main issue, I think, is cost. Like you to build a whole tiny home village might cost like $80,000 or something, or $100,000, but then to get the land to put it on might be like $500,000 plus. And so it's like you could build 5 villages for the cost of like one piece of land. And so the actual building of it, people are excited about that. The community is really excited to come and build and get stuff done and just like make progress. But then that first part of here's a spot you can do it on is the part that's always the hard part to get. So if it was pie in the sky and money wasn't an object, we'd just start buying up land and then unleashing the floodgates for volunteers and maybe even people that need the housing themselves to actually build their own housing and get in there and just get it done. And because the reason why it doesn't get done a lot of times is because there's a lot of money to be made in homelessness for a lot of organizations. Like for example, and I know that an organization can be classified as a nonprofit, but most nonprofits have paid staff. A lot of the budget goes toward that. Your ability to continue forward might be contingent on being able to receive government funds or a grant or something like that. The reason why HomesNOW can move quickly and scale up pretty high is because we go with a resident managed approach where we don't have paid staff, and so gotta love that airplane, huh? But yeah, we don't have paid staff, and so that means that we're able to spend the vast majority of that money on directly where it needs to go, the infrastructure, the houses, supplies, things like that. And that's actually the cheap part. The expensive part is if you had paid staff. So for example, like in the last year, HomesNOW might have taken in like $80,000 or something. But how much does it cost to pay one staff member if they were a full-time job? It might be like at minimum like $30,000 a year or something, or $50,000 or more. So at the amount of money that HomesNOW is bringing in, that would be our entire budget just to pay one person. And so the fact that we've sacrificed that and we don't do that means that we're able to move so much quicker and able to get set up much more quickly, because we can do more with less, so to speak. And then what's good about the resident managed approach versus having a paid staff is that people manage their own village in independence, working with others, taking care of the administration of things. That leads to a point where people really can be independent. When you have paid staff like coming down and like watching everything all the time, it kind of makes it more like you have a babysitter or somebody that manages you as a person, and kind of it's treated like you're not a capable person, rather than the reality, which is that it's not a dysfunctional person, it's a dysfunctional housing system. And so that, and when people get that idea that it's not necessarily that the person has the problem, it's that the system doesn't provide for what people need as good as it can. I'm not saying it's not doing anything. If the system didn't do anything at all, it would be much worse, but there's a lot more that can be done. And so
in this model, in what you've established here, what's the next step for these people? Is this permanent? Is it transition?
Well, I can tell you that officially this is classified as an emergency shelter and transitional housing, and that's how it's defined in our city permit, how it's defined in all of the contracts we've signed. I can tell you that if somebody's staying at a HomesNOW village, that there isn't any time limit. People can leave when they're ready to leave. I can tell you that there's not enough housing for people that are ready for housing, people that are totally ready to go move into an apartment or a room in a house because of their income level or medical reasons or whatever. They might not be able to actually move in yet to that. And so I would say we have multiple types of success at this village. We have at our villages. We have people that are residents who they have just fallen on hard times. Maybe they're living in their car or something. They get a job. They're able to save up money and move out, and then a slot opens up for somebody else that needs it. I can say that we have other residents that are just as successful. That they're on a housing list. They're waiting. Maybe they're on disability. Also, the income is too low for what they can pay on the market typically. So while they're waiting, they help to run the place and keep it running smoothly and effectively, and are just as capable as anybody else at managing a site. And there's more of a stake in it too, because it's your own housing. You live there, so of course you want it to be as good as it can be. But when you have outside volunteers running everything, then it takes that away from them.
So most people would go from here to like an apartment.
Or the housing that they want to get. As soon as they're able to.
So let's tell me a little bit about your story and why you're involved in this.
Okay. Yeah. I first of all, I just want to say that I've always lived a comfortable life. I grew up upper middle class. I always, if I really got into trouble, my parents could bail me out. Like they haven't really had to, but it could happen. But that also makes me. I mean, that's part of the reason why I'm a small business owner. I'm more willing to take a risk to start my own business, because I know that if I fail, that I have a backup to support me, and that's always been the case. And so, what I kind of see it similarly to what we're trying to do here. Is that a lot of people never had that backup, and so there needs to be a way to get that backup so people are more willing to take risks and move forward and stuff. But how did I get involved with this in the first place? Well, in 2016 I was campaigning for Bernie Sanders. I don't like Bernie anymore, but like at the time I did, and I was a big supporter. In the process of working on that campaign, I met other people, and one of those people was Jim Peterson, who was formerly homeless for 17 years. And what happened was that after that election was over, we were pretty unhappy about how it all turned out, and we had organized and actually were able to like do fundraising and sold T-shirts and buttons and things like that. So after that was over, we had this organization of people like working together, and it's like, okay, what do we do now? Now that this is all over, well, let's focus on, and then I kind of had the idea of let's focus on a local issue. The mistake was focusing on a politician or a candidate that we thought was going to create some change. Let's focus on an actual issue and maybe work on that. And then the obvious thing that popped up here was homelessness, because homelessness has been a problem in Bellingham for quite some time, and Whatcom County. So we thought that was and that's the most visible issue. That's like the first issue that I see that everyone talks about on a regular basis as the main issue here. And
how many years would you say?
So it's been an issue for a while. I think that it becomes more of an issue, whether it's Bellingham or any other city, when you get gentrification, wealthier people moving in from other cities like Seattle or Bellevue or wherever, and they move here, and then it pushes out all the people that grew up here that can't afford higher rates of rent and the cost of land and stuff like that. And I'm not necessarily saying that it's like bad to move up here if you're from somewhere else, but that there needs to be provisions for people that are displaced from a lack of income from being able to afford housing. And so that's what hasn't been done. So our efforts have been kind of based on, okay, I would call it bang for buck. Okay, so for the minimal amount of resources, how do you get a maximum standard of living to where you can just keep going, scale it up, and make a serious dent in this problem? This doesn't have to be permanent. If there was actual housing available for people at the standards that people refer to when they refer to permanent housing, then HomesNOW wouldn't even need to exist. We wouldn't even need to be here. I could go back to making my video game or whatever. But the point is that it is a problem. It's not being solved fast enough, and so we're moving as fast as we can, almost on a triage basis. But we're not willing to accept a quality of life that's like you're just living in a tent with no electricity or water or anything. It needs to be like you have your own place. But yeah, it's the basics. It's triage, so to speak. But we try as much as possible to make it feel like home and at as high standard as possible. So that's why our units are based around like, okay, it's like a small bedroom in a house. Yeah, we have shared kitchen, and if you have shared areas for kitchen and bathroom and stuff like that, that's what makes it affordable. Trying to wire up every single unit separately with its own water and toilet and everything like that and separate kitchen for each unit and stuff is what makes it really expensive.
So what would you say to somebody who's never experienced homelessness before?
I would say that it can happen to anyone, and it can happen to you. And a lot of time, there's a lot of different reasons for it. It's one reason that pops up a lot is medical. I had a medical condition. I had cancer. I broke my leg, and then I got fired after I broke my leg, and then I lost my apartment, and then it just downward spirals from there. Or you get it where someone lost their job, they can't pay their lease, they get evicted, they get a job again, and now they can afford an apartment, but because they have an eviction on their record, they can't find an apartment even if they can afford it. Sometimes people have the money to afford it, but they can't pay first and last month's rent and deposit, and they can't just shell out $5,000 or and it can happen to you. People think it can't happen to you. They think, oh yeah, no, I'm smart enough, or I work hard enough. There's no way that could ever happen to me. But that's what I would say the main thing to people that are not homeless, that it can happen to you. And these are all just regular people just like you that are in a bad position, and a lot of times people don't understand it until they're the ones put in that position. That would be the main thing I'd say about that.
Yeah.
My kids piece of junk. I got it different.
So in the broader scope of things,
I still got
do you think this is a model that that anybody could use, or any city or county could use to help sort of move the needle toward housing people?
Yes. I think that it scales up very well. Again, it depends on what assumptions you're operating on. If you're operating on the assumption that these are people that are not able to take care of themselves and need lots of help and like coaching to be stable, then you might think that this model would never work. But if you're operating on the other assumption, and I don't want to say assumption, but operating on the facts that it's typically the opposite, that people can take care of themselves, just like these people are fit for the same housing that you or I enjoy, that all you need is the right people that actually will want to maintain their housing and want to get along with others, and then they can run it themselves. The reason why it can scale up is because the people that live there are the people that run it. If you go with a different model where the people that run there aren't the people that, or the people that run it aren't the people who live there, then it only scales up as far as the money comes in. So again, you go back to that paid staff thing. It gets very expensive. So if we wanted to set up 3 sites and we needed 3 sites of paid staff, then we would need a corresponding amount of money to account for that. And then pretty soon you're getting into millions and millions of dollars a year. But if it's the people that live there that run it, and in a zero rent or low rent situation, so to speak, then you avoid that altogether, and you can set them up anywhere as long as you have a basic screening process and people can follow the basic rules of. Then people can run it themselves, basically. They do need a supportive. I think we need a supportive board, though. So like the board of HomesNOW is a supportive board, and we make sure that nobody goes without supplies or things that they need. If somebody needs something, just let us know, and the donations that come in, we just get what they need. If there's fees they need to pay to move forward on something, we try to help. There's limits to what we can do on that front, but another thing we try to do is make sure residents have laptops and internet access. That helps people apply for services or apply for things. So HomesNOW is mostly focused on this housing part, surgically, pretty much. That when people talk about homelessness, they sometimes assume it's housing plus 52 other issues related to what
the housing first model.
Yeah. Housing first basically means that the housing comes first instead of the orthodoxy model of, well, before you're ready for housing, you need to go to drug and alcohol treatment. Before you can get housing, you got to go through this 6-week program. Before and you have to go through all these hoops in order to get the housing. That's the traditional model. The housing first model, by contrast, is okay. Here, you have a place. Here's your spot. Here's your house. Now that you're here, relax, get to know everyone. Here's our basic duties we have to do. And then after a while, people come to their own conclusions of what services they need and whatever on their own. And a lot of times, if you're asking somebody that's on the street to jump through all these hoops to get housing. A lot of times it's not going to happen. It's just going to fall through the net, and you have to be in the right state of mind to actually be able to move forward. So the first thing is getting people out of survival mode, and actual housing, regardless of your problems, gets people out of survival mode. And then from there, there's a much higher, I'm not saying it's 100%, but it's a much higher chance than the other way around for people to actually move forward.
Well, that's about it for questions that I have.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you want to add?
I would just say that as this pandemic goes forward, as the eviction bans, eviction moratoriums expire, this problem is just going to get worse. So we're trying to get ahead of the curve. HomesNOW can't solve it all. We have a certain model. Other organizations have different models to help different people. I would encourage anybody in the community to start their own nonprofit. If you have an angle that you think can make a difference in a different way than we can, get started now, because there's going to be 2 or 3 times as many people that need that help later. And so that's what I would suggest, getting ahead of it rather than being barely behind it, constantly. So we're going to keep trying to do everything we can, but whoever you are out there, you need to do something too. And so that's what I would suggest.